What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel, and in today's video we're going to be talking about The Watchers. Written and directed by Shyamalan, this film is based on a novel by A.M. Shine and stars people like Dakota Fanning, Georgina Campbell, Owen Furre, Oliver Finnegan, and more. So I think like a lot of people going into this movie, I was instantly intrigued by the fact that this was both the writing and directorial feature film debut of writer-director Ishana Shyamalan, the daughter to the famed M. Night Shyamalan. And he's a director who's incredibly divisive in a lot of ways, but without a doubt has created tons of films that are big when it comes to pop culture, especially in the early parts of his career. So going into this movie, I was intrigued simply by the fact that he was producing and that his daughter was a first-time filmmaker here in terms of directing and writing. She's of course worked on other things with her father as well as TV shows, so I guess she's not a first-time filmmaker altogether, but this is her debut in terms of a feature film debut. And I want to make it completely clear that I'm not really super familiar with the source material, The Watchers. I only saw the trailer, and this is just my review of this as a movie. So I'll open it up to you guys in the comments section that if you are a fan of the book and that's what brought you to this review, or you're just out looking at other people's reviews of this movie, I definitely want to open it up to you guys. Leave some comments down below. Are you a fan of the adaptation here? Is it a situation where the book is substantially better? Whatever the case may be, leave any and all comments, and I look forward to hearing some of the criticisms that people may have as fans of the books. But going into this movie, yeah, I was intrigued not only because of Ishana Shyamalan being a part of it and it being M. Night's daughter, I was also very interested because of the cast you have here, most notably people like Dakota Fanning and Georgina Campbell. I've been a big fan of them for a while, most notably Dakota Fanning, and seeing her in her adult years in a movie always intrigues me. And so yeah, going into this movie, I knew really nothing about it, and I think that the trailers for the most part have done a good job of feeling very much like a Shyamalan film, having that horror feel and vibe with it completely being wrapped in mystery. And going into it, I really didn't fully know what to expect. So for the sake of this review, since it is a fairly new film as well, I'm not going to get too deep into what this movie is all about. But all you need to know is the movie focuses on four individuals, mostly Dakota Fanning's character. She is the central character, the character of Mina, and she ends up finding herself trapped in a place called the Coop, which is a building in the middle of the forest where you essentially can't get out of the forest once you get in there. There's only one specific way out, but once you get in, it's kind of like a maze. You're trapped in there. During the day, you can come out of this thing called the Coop, which is essentially a little building that has one side that's all glass. During the night, they can't see what's out there. They can only see themselves, so it reflects like a mirror. But on the outside, they're hearing what is called the Watchers, a group of creatures that seem to be watching them and studying them every night. And if they try to leave during the night, or if they're outside of the coop during the night, they will be killed by these creatures. So immediately, Dakota Fanning's character ends up learning a set of rules from the three other individuals who have already been living in this coop. And during the day, they go out trying to find food and trying to find means of maybe escaping, but knowing that once the sun's starting to come down, they have to get right back into the coop, line up, and be prepared to be watched by the Watchers. And that's the base gist of the film. When I saw the trailer, it seemed interesting. It had me intrigued. I was very curious to know what these Watchers were, what it is that's watching them exactly. Was it people? Is it monsters? Is it some sort of creature? Who knows? And so going into it, that intrigued me. And I think that this movie, for the most part, at the very beginning, has that going for it. Intrigue. Again, I'm not familiar with the book, so I don't know where they really changed things up here. But I really didn't know what to expect as the movie was starting to play out. On one hand, what I can start this off in saying is that I thought it was very well acted for the most part. I think the movie's also very well shot, utilizes some great lighting, and utilizes the forest in a lot of really cool ways to create a very eerie and creepy tone. I think that's something that you would come to expect from M. Night Shyamalan, and you can definitely tell that he was passing off some tips to his daughter when it comes down to the overall aesthetic and feel that this film should have. And I think for the most part, it lands it when it comes down to the overall look, feel, and vibe of this film. The tone of the film is just right. But this is a PG-13 horror film, so that does tend to kind of limit you with what you can do, and you can't necessarily ever get too crazy when it comes down to gore or scares. When it comes down to the scary element of this film, I can genuinely say that I never really felt scared, but for the first portion of the film, I found myself fairly tense as to where it was going to go. There was intrigue. I was very curious about what was actually out there in the forest. Who are these Watchers? And I think the movie at least gives you plenty of answers on that. It's not one of those things where they leave it ambiguous and you're kind of questioning what it is the entire movie with no answers. I'm happy to say that The Watchers actually gives you some payoff on that. You will learn what these individuals are on the other side, what the Watchers are, and what their purpose is there. And I think for the most part, the movie does kind of give you a movie that answers most of those questions for you. With all of that said, though, I think where this movie was held back for me at the end of the day was in its story. This is a film that has a really interesting premise in the idea that you have these characters being watched. I don't want to give too much detail around the characters, but Dakota Fanning's character, very quickly into the film, we learn kind of lives a double life. There's a part of her that is a bit fake, and I won't get too much deeper into it, but there's a part of her that is a bit of a facade. And as we go throughout the course of the film, there is one thing that I thought was interesting is not only are they being watched and studied by whatever is on the other side of the glass, but they only have one thing that they can watch on the TV that's inside of this thing called the coop. And it's a reality show, which in and of itself is a facade in so many ways. I think we all know that when you watch a reality show, while there might be some elements about it that are reality, there's an element about it that's heightened or completely dramatized. And we know that all these years later, but there's still the element of people watching those things and a lot of times trying to emulate those things. So this film has some interesting social commentary when it comes down to the idea of, especially in a world of social media and AI art and different things like that, how we do live in a world where there are a lot of people walking around who just try to emulate others, that try to mimic others, that try to mimic things that they see in the world without actually having anything that makes them who they are themselves. So it kind of is in a way saying that there are these people walking around amongst us who are fake people, who are not what they seem to be. And on one hand, I found that to be a really intriguing premise, and I think the film does some interesting things with the Watchers, with Dakota Fanning's character, and some of the symbolism to kind of showcase some pretty metaphorical, interesting moments that touch on those exact themes I just mentioned. But I think beyond that element of me trying to pull some sort of thematic element from this film, what held this movie back from being a really solid watch for me was character development. This is a movie that in a lot of ways feels very hollow when it comes down to the characters and their story. There's only 4 of these characters. The movie runs for about an hour and 45 minutes, and it's one of those movies that you get to the third act of the film and you start to question, like, how did we get here so fast? Time has passed, things have happened, but it doesn't genuinely feel like you ever get to fully know these characters that are in the coop. We learn about the rules, we kind of learn about how long they've been there slightly, they kind of mention how long it's been for a couple of characters, we kind of know what the stakes are for them, but ultimately it never really feels like you get to know these characters. Things are happening, there is intrigue, there are elements about this film that are entertaining and that had me tense and watching with a lot of curiosity. It never lost my interest, nor can I say it bored me. But I have heard the criticism from some who have already seen the film that they found themselves bored, confused, or ultimately just uninterested. While I can't say that I felt those things myself, where I felt myself bored when it came to the film were with the characters, and just ultimately it made me feel more disappointed than anything, because I think you have interesting actors here who all give interesting performances and are in a very intriguing and creepy circumstance, but it never feels like it ever dives deeper than the surface level with these characters. And that's something I think that really holds this movie back from being something that you would want to watch time in and time out. It's also a film that kind of feels like it suffers from fourth act syndrome, where the movie felt like it ended and then kept going on for like another 15 or 20 minutes, ultimately to give me an ending that I can't necessarily say I loved. I almost felt that the section that you feel like the movie is actually coming to a close, while that would have been a little bit too convenient, ultimately has a little bit more satisfaction than the ending that actually happens. Again, it feels like the movie ends and then it feels like it goes on for another 10 or 15 minutes, and then you have an ending that just feels convenient and cliche and ultimately left me feeling like I was impressed by the intrigue of the premise. I was impressed by the performances. I was really intrigued by the thematic elements that have a lot to say about the fake personalities that we have in the world, and the fact that we do have a world that is built upon mimicking things that people think are cool or what's going to gain success for them or allow them to fit into the world. I think that that's a really interesting idea, but I don't think the execution, the script, or the screenplay did the story or did any of the characters or the actors any favors here. This is a situation, unfortunately, where I can say that I think had you had a similar premise, this story given to a writer-director that was a little bit more experienced, you could have had a substantially better film. But as a feature film debut as a director and writer in Ishana Shyamalan, I am very curious to see where she goes. I'm sure she's going to learn from this experience. I'm also sure her dad has been giving her pointers trailers, I'm sure that even with some of the reception this film is getting, she's learning from that, and this will only kind of strengthen what she does moving forward. I do look forward to seeing what Ishana Shyamalan does in future movies and TV shows, as I do think there's a really strong start here, but as a movie that I could run here to you guys and say, hey, go watch it, let me sit here and record a video, you guys have to see this movie. Unfortunately, it's not doing that for me, but I can see the potential of this movie working for certain individuals. So that's going to be my thoughts on The Watchers. And again, I definitely want to open up the floor to anybody who's familiar with the book, and definitely let me know how this matches up to the source material. Is the book better? Does the book expand upon these characters a lot more than this movie? Whatever the case may be, leave any and all comments down below. And if you saw the movie and you're just a fan of movies and that's what you came here for, definitely leave some comments down below. Is this something that's on your radar? Are you planning on checking it out? And if you already checked it out, did you like it? Did you not like it? Whatever the case may be, I look forward to hearing the various opinions around this movie down below, and I'll see you beautiful people in the next one. Bye-bye.